Imagine hiring the world's greatest chef, then telling him he's not allowed to use knives. That's essentially what Keir Starmer is doing to the SAS right now, and the soldiers have had enough. They're not waiting around to be thanked. They are walking out. Britain's most elite fighting force, the regiment whose motto is "Who Days Wins," the unit that stormed the Iranian embassy live on national television in 1980 and made the whole country stop and stare, is hemorrhaging soldiers. Not to a foreign enemy, not to exhaustion or injury. They are leaving because they are terrified of human rights lawyers. And the man who helped build that exact legal architecture is currently the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. You absolutely, genuinely, could not write this. So let's break down exactly what is happening, because the details here are breathtaking. SAS soldiers are resigning in significant numbers over fears they will be subjected to witch hunts by human rights lawyers, with multiple sources confirming that personnel across 22 SAS, Britain's most celebrated Special Forces regiment, have applied for premature voluntary release. These are not ordinary people who got tired of the commute. These are individuals who survived one of the most punishing military selection processes on the planet. Men who tabbed for days across the Brecon Beacons in brutal weather carrying enormous weight, who passed interrogation training that would break most people within hours. And they are quitting, voluntarily, because a barrister scares them more than a hostile combatant. Now let that reality sit with you for a second, because there's more. A memo circulated by the service associations of the SAS and Special Reconnaissance Regiment revealed that there are currently 242 ongoing legal investigations into Special Forces personnel covering conflicts in Northern Ireland, Afghanistan, and Syria. 242 open cases. That is not a legal process. That is an industry. And here is the kicker that makes the whole thing even more staggering. Over half of those investigations are against currently serving members. Not retired veterans living quietly in the countryside. Active operators. People who are being sent on missions today while simultaneously fighting lawyers at home. Imagine turning up to the most dangerous job in the world, in the dark, under fire, having to make a split-second decision, knowing that whatever you do could land you in a courtroom years from now. That is not a profession. That is a trap. The human cost of this is real, and it is severe. Among those understood to have resigned are several senior warrant officers, the backbone of the regiment, the most experienced operators in the unit, the people who hold institutional knowledge you simply cannot replace. When they go, they take decades of expertise with them. You cannot retrain that. You cannot manufacture that experience from scratch. The proportion of recruits even capable of passing SAS selection is a tiny fraction of the overall armed forces, and the investment required to produce each one is enormous. Losing them over legal liability is not just a blow to the SAS, it is a blow to Britain's entire security posture. And here is where it becomes truly extraordinary, because this is not an accident. This is a consequence. Keir Starmer and his Attorney General Richard Hermer were both prominent figures in a movement that, beginning in the late 90s, sought to use the courts to constrain the behavior of governments in conflicts. The intention was to make warfare compliant with human rights law, or ideally not conducted at all. They specifically challenged the idea that covert operations were a legitimate element of warfare. The European Convention on Human Rights was extended to war zones, meaning that soldiers' split-second decisions in combat could be scrutinized years later by people who had never been anywhere near a battlefield. The man now standing at the dispatch box making speeches about defense investment and military expansion is the same man who spent years constructing the legal framework that is now pushing the SAS out the door. If that is not the most spectacular act of political self-sabotage in modern British history, it is at least firmly in the top 3. The military establishment has been screaming about this for months. 9 former military chiefs, 9, wrote an unprecedented open letter to Starmer before Christmas warning that soldiers' confidence in the legal system had deteriorated to such an extent that it risked everything. They warned that today, every British soldier deployed must consider not only the enemy in front of them but the lawyer behind them. Then 7 former SAS commanders followed up with their own letter in December, warning that Britain's elite troops were at risk of becoming scapegoats for politicians, and that their humiliation was actively rewarding Moscow, Tehran, and Beijing, doing the enemy's work. That phrase came from men who gave their careers to protecting this country. It should have been on the front page of every newspaper in Britain the morning it was published. A former regimental sergeant major of 22 SAS put it in the plainest possible terms. Troops feel they have been betrayed. They are afraid of getting a knock on the door from lawyers. The right to life of armed terrorists and murderers now apparently carries more legal weight than that of the soldiers sent in to stop them. A barrister at a desk outranks an operator in the field. That is the Britain Keir Starmer has presided over, while simultaneously telling the country he is serious about defense. The tragic irony is that Starmer keeps talking about military strength. He talks about leading coalitions, about being ready for threats, about protecting British interests. Meanwhile, HMS Dragon took 3 weeks to reach the eastern Mediterranean after a British airbase was hit by a drone. The defense investment plan promised last autumn still has not been published. And now the very tip of the military spear, the SAS, is bleeding out through the back door because the Prime Minister's own legal legacy made soldiering too personally dangerous to continue. Who days wins? Right now, under this government, who days gets sued? If that makes your blood boil, you are in the right place. Subscribe to British Reform, hit the notification bell, and stay with us, because this story is only getting started.